Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. We're down to the final 8 of the PDC 2023 World Championships. There's the 8 names on screen there. We're on a blank day today, on the last day of 2022, the 31st of December, and the action returns on New Year's Day with the quarters, the 2nd of January with the semis, and then the all-important final on the 3rd of December. We're going to break down the 8 players, what are left, the odds, who we think is going to win from this point onwards. And at this stage, I'm going to admit that the 3 players I backed have all gone. So it's a blank slate for me. I've got no betting interest as we stand now, but hopefully we can find the winner of the 8 remaining. Pie Man, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty well. My book has also took a huge dent. Looking really rosy going into the last 16, but unfortunately been on the wrong side of a few in the last day or so. So yeah, I've still got a couple. I've not got my main bets are all dead in the water, unfortunately, but I've still got two runners. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, look, I think purely from a darts fan perspective, you've got 8 top quality seeded players in there, and although the markets suggest that at least 3 of these quarterfinals are going to be fairly one-sided, I'm not so sure. I think they'll all be competitive games.
Yeah, we've got 3 of the top 4 in the rankings. They're the obvious names there, but Dimitri, we came into the tournament saying he's not done too much in the last year or so, but I think he's turned up. Similar comments could apply to Bunting, who appears to love Ali Pali, and he's playing excellently. And Johnny Clayton as well, a bit of a forgotten man, although he is ranked 7th. We said that he's had a quiet year, but really switched it on, I think, and returning to possibly his top stuff. And Chris Dobey was absolutely fantastic last night in his win as well. So, yeah, where should we start, Pie Man? The top one there, Price against Clemens?
Yeah, I think quarter by quarter, and that is the first quarter, isn't it? Price and Clemens. So Price, a 1-5 general shot to beat Gabriel Clemens, 7-2. It's a big disparity. It sounds like it should be a one-sided affair. You can understand why on the pedigree. Gerwen Price to get to this point has beat Luke Woodhouse 3-1, Barney 4-0, and Jose de Souza 4-1, averages of 92, 93, 94. We talk about Price growing into a tournament, so the numbers are certainly backing that up. But I think it's fair to say he hasn't really set the world alight yet. And that's probably reflected in the fact that he's 3rd favourite in the outright betting. He's actually slipped behind Michael Smith in that regard. Him and Michael Smith would, of course, meet in the semi-finals if they both won their respective matches. And I think it's very interesting because the market is basically suggesting that Michael Smith would go off favourite in that game, something that we probably haven't seen for quite a long time. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong necessarily, just an interesting observation. As I said, Price, he's done what he's needed to do. He was nervy in that first game against Luke Woodhouse by his own admission, lost the first set, but rallied back to win it. Barney didn't really turn up against him, but I think a bit of credit has to go to the Welshman there for not letting Barney get going in that match. And then again, against Jose de Souza, you found the pundits were all saying, well, Pricey wasn't that impressive. But then again, he's got through and he's dropped 2 sets. And we know he can deal with it in these latter stages. A winner in 2021, of course. Last year, he lost to Michael Smith at the quarterfinal stage 5-4. So I'm sure he's desperate for that potential rematch there because Michael Smith, of course, there was a bit of, you may remember in that game, there was a bit of needle with the crowd and Price, a lot of whistling, booing on key shots, and it eventually kind of became costly. I think Price is a very dangerous player when he has motivation and fire in his belly. And I'm sure he'd love to sort of right that wrong against Smith. But he really can't afford to overlook Clemens. Someone who I've been a big fan of over the years on this channel, but have kind of ditched in recent months because his form did fall off a bit of a cliff, especially in the middle part of the year. However, 2 Euro Tour quarterfinals in his last 2 events did hint at a slight return to form. But I've got to say, hand on heart, I did not see this coming. Went off around 400-1 pre-tournament, Clemens, but he dismissed Willie O'Connor 3-0, Jim Williams 4-3 in a classic, and Alan Suter 4-1 with averages of 95, 97, and 93.9. So basically, Clemens' lowest average is very much the same as Price's highest average so far. So if you're going purely on the numbers from this tournament, you'd have to say that Clemens has got more than a fair chance in this fight. This is a personal best for the German giant. Round 4, last 16 was his previous best, where he spurned a load of missed darts against Ratajski. None of those finishing lines nerves against Alan Suter, where I thought he was really impressive. Suter, a dogged character and a tough man to hold off, but he did so with relative ease. He has this fantastic scoring game that we all know fine well about. And as much as that has been in great working order, I've been even more impressed with his finishing. Clemens, somebody that we would associate with messing around on the outer ring, spurning chance after chance after chance. He hasn't done that, and that makes him so dangerous. I do think he's going to need a fast start against Price, but you've got to say on the numbers, he must have a chance here.
Yeah, I just worry that this is Clemens the first time he's come up against a big name in this tournament. I know that's obvious in saying, but I just think the finish line bothers him and has done previously. Maybe he's turned a corner, Pyman. Maybe he'd be better if he was to get towards the finish line. But
he had no right. He had no right to win that game against Jim Williams. He was up against it, and the finish line didn't bother him there. And I thought that he was really good against Suter, because Suter got a setback on the board, was having his usual rally, starting to pop in a few 3-figure finishes, and he he had an opening to close the match. It's the kind of opening we've seen him muck around with in the past, but he did do it. I totally agree with you in what you say here. This is a big name here, and he does sometimes have a little bit of a confidence crisis, a self-doubt, I think, when he plays the very, very best. I mean, we've seen him get to, even on a lower level, we've seen him get to Pro Tour finals and, kind of not bring his best to the table in the last step. So he does have questions to answer. He is the first German ever to make a quarterfinal at Ali Pali, and I think that's brilliant for German darts, a huge growing market, possibly the quickest growing market in the world. So that's brilliant for them. I personally do think he will make a game of it, but Price a worthy favourite.
Hey, look, I've enjoyed Clemens, and it has been a career best effort. The viewing figures in Germany apparently have been tremendous. 1.5 million, I think Dan Dawson said, watched his game against Jim Williams, which is amazing. He's got to win 5 sets off Gerwen Price. That's a massive ask in my opinion. And I think Price is growing into it. I still think he's got the X factor. He's not been as standout as Van Gerwen, as we will come on to. Price.
What do you make about Price's being slightly above Michael Smith in the outright market?
I'm not sure. I've kind of viewed Michael Smith, particularly. Yeah, I've kind of viewed Michael Smith as a rival to my main bet, Luke Humphries. So probably not viewing him in the most positive light as I should be doing, Michael Smith. But look, he's gone out there last night against Joe Cullen and averaged 103, as you can see on screen there, and he's got the job done. He's proven it this year in some lower priority tournaments, if you like, and he's obviously going massively in the right direction. He's made the final here before, semi-final, beat Price here last year, as you said. I've not really got that much argument with that little change in the market there, Pyman, to be honest. If they were to meet, I would see that as a 50-50 game, and the market slightly might prefer Smith. I think that, yes, the outright prices suggest Smith might be a 8-11 favourite against Price, but I think in reality it will be more to a genuine coin toss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I personally think if you want to back someone, if you want to back Price, you back him now, because they're both. Price is actually shorter to win his game than Smith is, but I think that's bizarre, because I think they will end up going off virtually the same price if they meet. Looking at Michael Smith versus Stephen Bunting. Smith 1-3, Bunting 5-2. It's been fairly easy going either side of his middle game for Michael Smith. Beat Nathan Rafferty 3-0, averaging 96.6, and that was a really early marker in a early rounds that didn't have too many standout performances. And then yesterday, as you say, 103 average against Joe Cullen. I was really surprised in Joe Cullen's performance, because he'd looked so good up to then, and he did not turn up. His doubles were atrocious. He still banged in a load of 180s and still got comfortably beat there. So that tells you all about his doubling. The match with Martin Schindler was the one where we learnt the most about Michael Smith, wasn't it? 3-1 down to the wall. And Schindler didn't really wilt. I mean, yes, I think a more experienced player in those kind of events maybe would have seen that game out, but I don't think he imploded as such. He kept going, but what Michael Smith did is he raised his level, and he raised it to a point where Schindler just couldn't handle it, unfortunately for him. Runner-up here last year, of course, and now a major winner, so it is arguably a different Michael Smith. Talked about this in the pre-tournament preview, the fact that Smith the market seemed to think that breakthrough major victory had changed his chances of lifting this title. We still don't really know if it has, but I like what I've seen of him so far. He looks very relaxed on that stage now. I know you mentioned, Adam, about him showing a little bit more emotion on the stage, and I thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah, he did. I think the last, say, 15 months of Michael Smith's career, he's deliberately been going to collect his darts, winning legs, losing legs, without showing the emotion that he used to in his younger days. And I think that has perfectly coincided with him having a great year in 2022, winning a range of tournaments at different levels. And then I think against Martin Schindler, the head shaking that we saw from Smith 2, 3, 5 years ago was back to a bigger extent than I've seen for some time. Like I say, at least the last year. That was a worry, but he came through. He was giving it plenty afterwards. I mean, he was a 1-3 favourite to beat Schindler, and he was giving it, Saint Helens never quit, this, that, and the other, and quote tweeting other people, and I know he's active on social media, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't the final, mate. It was the last 32 of the World Championship. But anyway, if that's how he wants to deal with it, obviously he didn't. There wasn't the opportunity for him to do much head shaking against Cullen because he was in control throughout. It's a bit of a derby against Bunting. Bunting has done naffle this year. And I remember a couple of years ago, Pyman, when we did our first year on the channel, the year that Price won the 2021 Worlds, Bunting made a semi-final that year, and I remember backing him for the Masters at 100-1, and he was awful. He just fell off a cliff again, and he's done it previously as well. Remember that time he played a semi, possibly with Barney, or quarter with Barney, and Barney was holding his hand up in the interview and stuff like that. He just turns up at Ali Pali. He absolutely plasters the 180 when he's in good form, Bunting, and has been doing that this tournament. That game with Chisnall was fantastic. There was 180s going in all over the gaff. Luke Humphries obviously there was something wrong with him last night, but Bunting has brushed him aside. Yeah, he's been playing awesome, and he's going to go into the Smith game high in confidence, low in pressure, in my opinion, with Michael Smith being the second favourite for the tournament and Bunting being any price you like in the outright market. I think it's a free hit for him. He loves the Ali Pali stage, and he could give Michael Smith a game absolutely no problem.
Yeah, I think he's a really dangerous opponent for Michael Smith. As you say, in good form, very little pressure on him. But the most interesting angle of it for me is this kind of notoriety. These two know each other very, very well. Both St. Helens born, as you say, they've played each other countless times over the years. In the last 5 years, they've met 4 times, and the record is 2-2. I don't see Bunting holding any fears over Michael Smith. They play a very similar game, both hard-hitting scorers. So even if Smith starts peppering the 180s, like you say, there's no reason that Bunting can't do it. I mean, he's effectively averaged, he's just shy of a ton last night in the end, but he's effectively averaged a ton in back-to-back matches. The only other player to do that is Michael van Gerwen. So he seems in a really good headspace. He's been to the semi-finals before, as we say, where he lost to Gerwen Price. So he's comfortable at this end of the tournament. I think he's a really, really interesting price at 5-2. And what we saw off Michael Smith, I was really hoping Joe Cullen was going to give him more of a test yesterday, because I wanted to see how he would react if that game against a real quality opponent had gone into the latter reaches. We didn't get to see it, but we might get to see it against Stephen Bunting. And Bunting 25-1 in the outright. So if you do fancy him to topple Michael Smith, I think that would be of interest as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in any rush whatsoever to be back in Michael Smith to beat Stephen Bunting on current form. I really wouldn't. On to the third quarter final. Dimitri against Johnny Clayton. As alluded to earlier, 2 players really that have certainly got the quality, major winners. There's all sorts to like on their CV, but 2022, particularly by their previous high standards, hasn't been brilliant. But we're turning up at the biggest tournament of the year, and to be honest, they've both switched it on, and fair play to them.
Yeah, Dimitri has only dropped 1 set in this tournament so far, yet nobody's really talking about him, and he's still 25-1 in the outright betting, which is, if you hadn't watched a lot of darts through the year, you'd probably struggle to understand why that is the case, because the last couple of years we've seen Dimitri start the tournament in and around that sort of 16 to 25 to 1 mark, win a few games, and then, suddenly he's in that sort of 10 to 1 region because there's a bit of momentum behind him. He's a major winner, of course, a very capable player under pressure. So, it's strange to see his price hasn't detracted at all. But then that is also testament to the fact that, one, he's in the quarter of MVG, the even money favourite. Two, there's a question marks over who he's actually beat. I mean, he's beat Lawrence de Lagen, who averaged in the 70s. Christoph Ratajski 4-1. That game never even threatened to get going. And then Kim Huybrechts didn't turn up yesterday either against his compatriots. So has Dimitri really had to show his best? No. We have to give him a little bit of respect for what he's achieved, winning the World Match Play, playing on the World Series, a Premier League regular. I mean, this man is used to playing in big matches. His average is 94, 93, 95. I've got no problem with that. He's kind of done all that's been required of him thus far. But he's gonna have a tough game against Johnny Clayton, obviously, because Johnny Clayton has probably been more impressive in his resurgence. Beat Danny Van Tripe averaging just shy of a ton in his first game. Did a job on Brendan Dolan 4-1, average just under 94, but that was much higher before some messing around in the latter end of that game. And then his most impressive performance of all, getting rid of Josh Rock, much to my dismay, as much as I love Johnny Clayton. Financially that was a hammer blow to take, but it was a fantastic game. And I think, a lot of the pundits kind of summarised that experience won the day.
Yeah.
To me, I think experience was a key factor. But I think we also have to say that Rock missed 34 darts at a double. You simply can't do that over 7 sets against someone the calibre of Clayton. But what I would say encouragingly for Clayton is he got better as that game went on. He played his best stuff in set 6 and set 7 when the pressure was absolutely top notch. And that bodes so well for the latter reaches of this tournament. We know what Johnny Clayton can do when he's fully firing. He won the Premier League. He won countless non-ranking events, which has given him this kind of false ranking. If all the events he won last year were ranked, he'd be in the top 4 in the world. Now, he's had a tough 2022 by his own high standards, by those high standards. However, this little route into the tournament, playing a relatively unfancied youngster in Van Tripe, and then one of the weakest seeds in Brendan Dolan, it just gave him a really nice toe in, I think. And then that Josh Rock game, he withstood the early barrage, and the best I have seen of Johnny Clayton so far is the last couple of sets I've seen him play. So it makes me think going into this game that he can get the better of Dimitri. I think it's priced as the tightest quarterfinal with good reason, but I fancy the Ferret to kind of just overcome the Belgian. I don't know how you see it.
I'd be with Clayton, but I just do struggle generally with Dimitri's style and pace, etc. I mean, that's probably one for another video, but it's just a fact. Moving on to Van Gerwen, who, without any question, has been the most impressive player at this World Championship so far this year. We've not done much reflecting in this video. We're looking forward to the last 8, but that game against Mensur was fantastic. As you can see there, Van Gerwen averaging 107. He's averaged over 100 in all 3 of his games. He's looked dominant at most times. I know Mensur nicked a couple of sets off him, one in sensational fashion. But yeah, I just think he's been imperious so far in this tournament. Dirk was obviously off it last night, but Van Gerwen had a lot to say about that. A lot of influence on Dirk's performance because he just came out the blocks and was on fire pretty much, and Dirk basically capitulated, didn't he, towards the end. But he's the even money favourite now in the tournament. We sat here in June and he was 4 or 5 to 1. Start of the tournament he was 11 to 4. I usually like to look at markets, as you know me, Pie Man, and you, to try and take on the favourite and try and dismiss the favourite and find ways to beat him. At the moment, it's obvious to say he's even money in an 8-runner race. He's been fantastic so far.
Yeah, it's going to take Van Gerwen to drop in standards or a sort of once-in-a-lifetime performance to deny him that 4th title, I think, because we talk about the other players, I'm giving them a little bit of a wide berth with some of the averages saying, oh, they've only averaged 94, 95, but they've done what they needed to do. Well, Van Gerwen has shown that if you're really top of the shop, He played a Louis Williams who never got going and a Dirk van Dijvenbode that never got going, and he still averaged north of 100. And then he's played a Mensah Suljovic who's played the game arguably of his life, and he's averaged 107. So it's kind of like, I will average 100 and something regardless of what you do. And if you do manage to stay with me, I've got another gear on top of that. So I think, it's very easy to say when the numbers and the prices are like this. It is Van Gerwen's tournament to lose now. The only thing I would say is we haven't seen somebody get ahead of him. We haven't seen him need to chase. All of these games, even against Mensah, he went 2-0 up. Mensah played fantastically to very, very nearly get it back to 2-2. And I would have loved to have seen how that panned out because Mensah was playing well. But then you have this extra issue of when that player gets in front of Van Gerwen, can they sustain it? And I think the only players I would be confident in this field in saying that they could, sustain a lead if they got it over Van Gerwen would be Gerwin Price, Michael Smith, and probably Johnny Clayton as well on his very best, because they've all done it before. But it is Van Gerwen's to lose, and it's all well and good me saying get in front of him, but when he comes out of the blocks in his first set averaging 114, 115, what are you meant to do, really? I mean, Dirk won the bull against him yesterday, and he hit 5 180s or something in the first set, and he still lost it. So you really do have to be red hot from the start. Chris Dobey, we should just give him some credit here. I don't want to make it just all about Van Gerwen because he's been unbelievable. He didn't pull up any trees beating Martin Kleermaker, but to beat Gary Anderson and Rob Cross, two former world champions that played well. I mean, Anderson didn't play badly at all. He spurned a lot of darts at double at key moments. Anderson was a set and a break up. But Dobey, after that, was mesmeric. And they had words in the back room. No surprise to see Gary Anderson having words with someone. They had words in the back room after 4 sets when Dobey was 3-1 up. And Dobey came out and just 180s everywhere. And he said, I wasn't going to let him back in after that disagreement that we had. But then no one, despite that great performance, not many people were talking about him against Rob Cross. It was all about how good Rob Cross has looked, how composed Rob Cross has looked. Unfortunately for Rob Cross, this is kind of the story of his 2022 where he turned up, played really well, but someone just played even better than him. Chris Dobey, is someone we associate with. All the talent never really kicked on. And this year he has been kicking on. We've talked about it in recent months on the channel. I think Van Gerwen previously has been a massive mental blockade for him. I think he lost his first 10 matches with Van Gerwen, but he did beat him this year. Does Chris Dobey believe he can beat Van Gerwen over 9 sets? That's the question in my head, because I believe if he plays well, he can go really close. But to have any chance, Dobey needs to not just say that he can beat him, he needs to go up there believing that he can beat him. And, I've already seen a little bit of press with Chris saying, oh, MVG, it's going to take something special. And so, I'm not sure that's the right mindset. I think he needs to focus on himself, because to go up and play Rob Cross over 6 sets and average 102 shows just how talented he is. And I hope he can bring that game to the table against MVG.
Yeah, absolutely. Echo that. I think if he brings it, could be a good game, and but Van Gerwen, as you say, does appear to be playing at 102 as a second gear, and he has got one more gear left if he needs it, and yeah, that's just Van Gerwen all over. I think actually Dobey might put up be more of a sterner test for Van Gerwen than the semi-final. There's a lot of water to pass under that bridge, but yeah, that's just how I see it there. If you was having a clean slate bet now, Pie Man, where would your money be going?
Well, I think it depends how you want to play it, really. I think the top of the market, you've still got each way terms in a lot of places, but a third. Some are still half odds for 2 places. So if you want to avoid Van Gerwen, the top 2 games are the ones to focus on. And I'd be quite happy to take on. Look, I'm not saying they're not going to win, but I'd be quite happy to take on Gerwin Price and Michael Smith at the prices. Gabriel Clemens, is 50 or 66 to 1 with good reason. I'm not saying he's going to beat Gerwin Price, but if you're betting him at them place terms, then you're effectively backing him to win 2 games. And if he was to shock price, you'd have him for a massive payout in his semi-final. I would actually prefer to play Stephen Bunting each way, and I think there's been a bit of money for him, as you can see, just because of the place terms. You know, on the exchange to actually win it, he'd probably be more out at like 25's region. But you know, we've talked about all the reasons why he can give Michael Smith a game. If you're backing him at 22-1 with the place terms, and you know, you're only needing him to beat Michael Smith, and you've got him for a 10-1 winner in his semi-final, and that'd be the way I would play it. And over the bottom half, I think if I was having a win bet, I would back Johnny Clayton at 11, just because I think if he does get up against Van Gerwen, he can beat him.
Yeah, I just think as it stands now, unfortunately, very boring. It just becomes a no bet event for me as we stand now.
Totally
I've tried
understand.
my very best, and I've lost money. Don't get me wrong. I have lost money on Humphreys, Rock, Dedeker, and Ross Smith, unfortunately. But I just can't see past Van Gerwen. Am I backing him at even money? No. But I'm just going to be sitting back and watching and enjoy. And as like we said at the top of the video, I do think we've got a real nice spread of a final 8. They're not the top 8 in terms of rankings, but we've got three of the top 4. That's plain to see. And then the likes of Clayton, Vandenberg, Bunting have been there, done it before. And then Dobey and Clemens are a bit of fresh blood in this latter stage of the tournament, and it's good to see. I think there's a really, really good mix. Some interesting games, some closer than others, and plenty to look forward to. There really is.
Yeah, definitely. And look, even if we're either going to get some fresh blood in the semis, or we're going to end up with semi-finals of like Gerwen Price versus Michael Smith and Johnny Clayton versus MVG. I mean, I think if you'd have offered anybody, any darts fan, that at the start of the tournament, you'd have bit your hand off, wouldn't you? I mean, it's going to be a cracking finish to this tournament, which admittedly was a slow burner. Rounds 1 and 2 were not up to the standards we've seen previously, and that brings its own questions. But I think the last 16, this tournament has come to life, and you look at them 8 names there, and you can only see a quality laden finish to this World Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a nice way to finish this one. We'll be back with previews of possibly semi-finals, definitely the final. We'll be reviewing all sorts of the action after this. Plenty of talking points on all sorts of players that we've not mentioned on this that have already fell by the wayside. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon on Doubles and Trebles. Drop us a like and subscribe.